Sometimes when you go to a new place, you think you're like how great you are. You're like, oh, I'm so good. I just got a job at this place. Yeah. And then you look around, you're like, I don't know anything. These people are so good.
Welcome to the Next Level Journalist, where you will hear from some of the best journalists in the business or who have been there, done that, and willing to share with you what they've learned so you can get better, faster.
Today is a first for the Next Level Journalist platform in that this is a 2-for-1 special. Ashley Sears and Ben Handelman, both are my guests. They both work for the Fox affiliate in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Thank you guys so much for making time for this today.
We dug out of the snow just to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we've got snow in Kentucky, but I can only imagine what it looks like a little north of me. So
yeah, we just bought a house. I was roof raking. I've never done that before. I don't know if I did it right. I just know you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, I've never heard that. I already learned something. Thank you guys so much for coming on. No. So for those who don't know, Ben and Ashley are an item and a former colleague of both of ours. Krista Lisser, shout out to her. She said, you got to connect with this couple. So I appreciate you guys giving me this opportunity and giving the viewers an opportunity to get inside of what it's like in your guys' day-to-day and all the above. So again, thank you so much for your time, and without wasting any more time, let's jump into this. You guys ready?
Yeah. All right, let's do it.
All right. Well, Ashley, ladies first, let's go down memory lane, if you will, and tell us a little bit about your interest in television, when you knew what you wanted to do, to get into TV, and just bring us up to speed and a Cliff Notes version of basically how you got from where you knew what you want to do to today.
I think I'm one of those rare people that I wanted to be a news reporter since I was a little kid. I used to wake up in the morning, watch the news, and I was like, that's what I want to do. But for some reason, I went to college and studied political science. And decided I didn't want to do news anymore when I went to college. And then by the time I graduated, I was like, wait a minute, what am I doing with my life? So I went to Indiana University and graduated from there. I took a year off and I got an internship with a television station. And then I went to grad school at Northwestern, the Medill School of Journalism there, which was great. From there, I went to Champaign, Illinois. I worked for 2 stations, WAND and WCIA. Which were fantastic. And then I wound up here. I met Ben in Champaign though. So I guess something great happened out of it.
Small market love story.
Yeah. And how about you, Ben?
So for me, I wanted to be like you. I wanted to be a sports guy from when I was in high school. I was like, I had to do sport. I want to be Bob Costas. I went to school. I grew up in Connecticut, so I went to Quinnipiac University, which is a school in Connecticut. Graduated from there right as the economy was crashing in 2007, 8, yeah, around then. 2007 is when I graduated. So sent out tapes all around the country. Got one response from Springfield, Illinois. Didn't know a whole lot about Springfield, Illinois. I now am a huge Abraham Lincoln fan. Moved out there, did about 2 years at WICS was my first job. Then they moved me to take an open anchor position at their sister station in Champaign. I was there for about a year and a half. They ended up laying me off, which was fine because my contract was coming up anyway. And it was time to move on. So it was kind of like, here's a little nudge before you're ready to go. And ended up here at Fox 6 in Milwaukee, where I've now been here it's coming up 10 years in April. Actually, it's going to be 9 years. So, and if you told us we'd be here for that long 10 years ago, I would have told you you're crazy. Oh, yeah, we love it. We love it up here in Wisconsin, and we're at a great station.
That's great. So, Ben, you went up there first, and then Ashley followed. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I was here for about a year, and then I came up the next year.
And it was crazy because obviously being married in news, I mean, getting a job in news is hard enough.
Yeah.
Getting a job in the same market is almost impossible. And that's obviously when I got the job, and then we were kind of realizing, yeah, this is like a serious thing. We're like, Ashley, I don't know, maybe we can get a job here in Milwaukee. I don't know how this is going to work out. And it just so happened that like a year later, she got a job at the same exact station. So we're really, really grateful about that, we had a new manager who took a chance on
Yeah,
that. Because, obviously, that can go one of two ways. It can be really great, or it can be awkward and terrible for people. So we're happy that our managers were okay with that, and it's worked out for them.
Well, good for you guys. Yeah, you're right. Getting a job in and of itself is a difficult task, and that you guys have managed to land at the same station. What advice would you give someone who's trying to break through to this business? What is it that they need to do? Ben, you mentioned how you got one response. Well, as you know, that's all you need. It's that one response. So, what would you encourage aspiring journalists, people who are trying to break through? Both of you guys, whoever wants to start. What they should do in order to stand out and get that one response, if nothing else?
I think networking is so important. You meet people on stories from different markets a lot of times, and it's great to, get their card or send them an email or shoot them a Twitter message. I think that's important now that you can actually connect with other reporters on social media and they will pay attention. And those people might be your foot in the door at a station. I always say also it's important not to burn bridges because this is a very small business and you know who the people are that may have burned bridges in the past. And when a news director comes to you and says, hey, do you know so-and-so? And you're like, yeah, let me tell you about this. That's a really important thing.
I feel like local TV and maybe all TV is just like a giant Kevin Bacon game. Like everybody is just like 1 or 2 degrees away from everybody else. So yeah, that's really good. I would also say when I was in college, maybe I didn't have the understanding that like I really could get a job in TV. I was like, yeah, I want to do this. I'm at a good journalism school. I have the resume tape, but still you're like, I don't know, like, is someone really going to put me on TV like right out of college? Like, how do you even do that? So just knowing that, yeah, I mean, if you go to a small market, the opportunities are endless for you. And there are news directors looking for people just like you with skills that I know college kids have that I certainly didn't have coming out, or people who are just having like video editing, or if you can make a TikTok video, you can totally be in local news. And then the networking is such a huge thing because we always joke about it. Like news managers, it's almost incredible how often if you just put a like, hey, my buddy, here's a resume of this person that I sort of know. Your news manager will be like, okay, fired. You're like, what? There's like 10,000 applications, but they almost need to hear that somebody actually knows this person exists and they know what they're getting themselves into. Don't be afraid to reach out to people who maybe, if you're a college kid, graduated ahead of you, you don't even need to know that person. Just reach out to them and say who you are, and you go to the same school, and say, hey, I'm trying to get my name in front of a news director, and be realistic. Like I wouldn't apply to be like the main anchor at Nightly News, but certainly don't, you don't have to like start market 200 either. So it's just reach out, connect. That's mainly it for me.
We could go a number of different directions with this conversation, especially having both of you all on here at the same time. But one thing I understand about both of you guys is that you both love storytelling. You both are good at storytelling. So with that said, what do you think makes someone a good storyteller? And again, whoever wants to answer this, first, or bounce ideas back off of each other.
I think watching good storytelling makes you a better storyteller. Watching the Boyds of the world, or the John Sharifi, and just learning, their craft is important. I think also working with great photographers is so important. We work with a staff of like amazing photographers who, when I first started, I was maybe a little hesitant or shy of how to tell a good story. And so many photographers took me under their wing and said, hey, you want to shoot this thing on a Saturday morning before your shift starts? And then they, you talk a story through in a way that I hadn't really done before in Champaign. But here it, really flourished.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like we were both really fortunate when we started at Fox 6. There were some incredible storytellers at our station, both who were photojournalists, the camera people who just had an eye for telling a story differently. And then like there's some names like Mike Lowe, who's in Chicago. Actually, Jeremy Ross is in Chicago. There are some of our investigators, Brian Polson, who works with us at Channel 6. They just are great at developing a story in a way that hooks you, just instantly hooks you. So I think it's really about, yeah, being a sponge. And I think, sometimes when you go to a new place, you think you're like how great you are. You're like, oh, I'm so good. I just got a job at this place.
Yeah.
And then you look around, you're like, I don't know anything. These people are so good. And it's just about being a sponge. News is such a craft that you'll never perfect and you'll change. And I'm still trying to do new things or write different ways, or I'm still working on my tracking, like sound more conversational. We all get into like a weird news voice when we're in local news and trying to get rid of that. And finding your voice, like, you don't want to copy someone, like you want to be inspired by how they do things. So like Boyd Hubert's a really good example. He's this great storyteller out of Minneapolis that basically everyone on TV knows him if you're really into storytelling, but there's not going to be another Boyd Hubert. He writes in his own certain style. You gotta have to pick your own style, but watch the good people that you're surrounded by and be a sponge. Yeah, I learned from her a lot. Even like it's fun being married because we bounce story ideas off of each other all the time.
And we always read each other's like promotables, sweeps pieces beforehand and say, maybe this line doesn't work or that doesn't work, or sometimes I'm just like, looks good.
Yeah, or sometimes she'll be like, you were good for the first minute of your story, and then I got bored. And I was like, thank you for saying that. Like, if your wife is saying that, people at home are thinking that, and then you can
I feel like we're probably our biggest critics, each other's, because you don't get that with, I don't know, people soften the blow a lot, and I'll just be like, that sucks. Like, so
we're like, what the heck are you saying? I don't understand this at all. What are you trying to say here? Like, while someone else would be like, it sounds so great. Like, she won't just tell it like it is.
No, I'm with you. Like, when I would show somebody something, I'd be like, no, there's something wrong with it. There's no way this is a perfect piece. So for you guys to have that right there under one roof is a pretty nice liberty there. And I like how you guys mentioned the photojournalist. I feel like, those people are, I don't want to say underappreciated, but just because they're not in front of the TV, they do a great job of, making others look good and helping them tell their story. So I appreciate you guys, giving them a plug, because they do such a great job. And
and they'll teach you things that something simple, and this blew my mind when I got in the news. As simple as like starting your story off, a photojournalist was like, I start my story off with a car that goes by. And I was like, okay. And then you start watching news pieces and you're picking up, like, you don't start out with just like cold, no gnats, and just a story will start with a car opening, car driving by, and that gnat will just get your attention. And you're like a little more hooked. And then it picks up. It's like photojournalists, when they're really thinking about audio and visual stuff. And there's some really good MMJs doing this now too. It's just like, wow, something so simple. Why didn't I think of that? And then you'll never forget it. And then you'll start writing as a journalist, like as a reporter, you start writing to sound better. These photojournalists are so good at getting stuff like that. So.
I also like how you guys both pretty much saying that you're always learning, that you haven't figured this thing out. That, when I say aspiring TV journalist to people, a lot of times people think, people that are trying to break through. And unfortunately, that seems like it's a mindset of some people. Once they're in, they've made it. When the reality is, I think, Ben, like you mentioned, you're still trying to find your voice.
Right.
And that's part of that process. So I appreciate that humility, because I think that's what helps separate people as well, that they're always trying to get better at their craft, like it sounds like you guys are.
Yeah, and there's so many different kinds of crafts. Like, I started as an MMJ when I met Ashley, and then became a reporter, and then I became a weekend anchor, and right now I'm a evening anchor, which is, each job is different, and being an anchor is totally different than being a reporter. So I'm still trying to hone what that means to be an anchor, especially nowadays. It's like, local news is changing so much, but it's different than 1980s anchor. And even the job's changing. I would say Ashley's job, being a reporter at night, is just totally, like, we've got people shooting on cell phones and doing crazy stand-ups, and it's crazy. So
well, tell us about that, Ashley, just how you've had to adapt during the season. Ben and I were talking before you came down, just how you were obviously a lot of reporters, have to report from home and stuff like that. Talk about some of the challenges and things that you've had to adapt and, be versatile, if you will, and to keep on going.
I think my story is a little different than most reporters because I had a huge chunk of COVID. I was on maternity leave. So I was lucky enough to kind of be away from working from home. And it was during a time that was kind of crazy with, stories of social justice here and the pandemic. And there was a lot going on and I was removed from that. I give my colleagues a lot of credit during that time. It was like extremely tough and you can get really burnt out, but they continue to churn out great stories. I can tell you, just working from home though is, everyone does it different at our station. Some people like sit in a car all day, or we're allowed like in the garage area of our basement. Some people sit in there for a large portion of their day to write and edit the story. What I do now is I work in my dining room. That's where we are right now. So we have an afternoon meeting that's usually a Zoom call, well, always a Zoom call. And then we're assigned our story for the day and we'll either go out and do interviews. My photographer will meet me at my home, pick me up. We go out and shoot stories. Sometimes some of the interviews are Zoom, which is like a blessing and a curse, because you're like, this is easy. We can get this quickly, but at the same time, technology is failing. And a lot of times the interview's not as personable, I found, it doesn't feel the same. The look of it is not as good, obviously.
But we're not talking about this Zoom. This Zoom call's great.
Of course not.
And then at the end of the shoot, we come back here. And what's crazy is I have a 7-month-old here. And then there's a nanny who watches our baby. And so it's like the 4 of us hang out here and I'll write my story. My photographer edits it and then we leave from here and we go live. My baby is here and sleeping then at that time, not awake during the 10 o'clock news. But it's kind of crazy just having to balance that at home because, you hear the baby cry or fuss or something and you're like, I want to step in, but at the same time, I need to go do this interview. And, if you were at a news station, you wouldn't have that conflict at all. Also, you could be distracted by things like, oh, I have laundry in the wash right now that I forgot about at 9 a.m. I put it in there and you're like, I need to go do that right now. And it's like, so you're balancing all these different things while trying to also put out. I'm not doing chores though on the regular. I have to clarify.
It's difficult too because we don't have the exact same schedule. She's Sunday through Thursday. I'm Monday through Friday. So we have Saturdays off together, and then Sundays is my second day off. And she's here in the living room with a photographer working. So it kind of feels like you're at work 6 days a week, even though I'm like off in the corner playing with blocks and trying to wrangle a 7-month-old. It's like you almost feel like you're just sitting with a 7-month-old in the newsroom a little bit. So that's made it a little difficult for your mind to decompress because it's, obviously so important with how crazy the world is right now. And we get basically 1 day to do that.
Even like I filled in anchored in January and you have to get special permission and we take our temperatures every day and fill out this form and whatnot. And I entered the station for the first time since last March. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm in the station. This is crazy. I feel like this is so different. And my desk is now someone else's desk. And I had to work in a completely separate area, like the entryway of our station. I wasn't allowed by anyone because like, I'm not a regular in the station. And, it's just odd. Even when I was in the building, it's not like I was actually in the building. Like I was looking at everyone through a glass window, like, help, can I come in and be your friend too?
Yeah. Old days, you'd be able to see your coworkers, be like, hey, what are you working on? What are you doing? Hey, did you do this story? Do you have this person's phone number?
Yeah.
You can't do that. I mean, you could call people up, but it's just a lot more challenging to have those easy conversations.
Yeah. Like we have so many emails now, I think.
So many emails.
Because it's people like, do you have this phone number? Do you know this? You know that? And it's like story ideas that you would normally just like say across the room, like, hey, this person reached out to me. Do you want to do this? Is now an email. And it's like every day you wake up and you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, you have like
I have
anxiety
a million
attacks looking at
emails.
your email. You're like, oh my God.
But yeah, I mean, that's the downside of it all is, in a newsroom, there is value in everyone being together and
Yeah.
bouncing ideas off one another, or, Ben coming over to me and saying like, your anchor toss doesn't work. Like, what are you trying to say? And then, now it's an extra phone call or an email and you might miss it and you're in the middle of something else. So it's not as easy just communicating.
Yeah, I miss somebody.
I mean, it is. It's such a crazy time that we're in. Obviously, you guys know better than anyone for all the reasons you just shared. And congratulations on the addition to the family before I forget there. Talk about some of the lessons, and obviously you've shared some of them already, but lessons that you guys have learned, by doing what you do, whether it be from a reporter standpoint or an anchor standpoint, or even if it's dating back to when you first got into it, just if you could share some of those lessons that you guys have learned over the years that you can pass along to others who can maybe avoid some of those tough lessons, or anything that come to mind that you guys think, this would be good to pass along.
Say a lot of lessons probably from the start.
Yeah.
You learn so much just in living life a little bit. Now that we've both been in the business, we've been at Fox 6 for 10 years and maybe almost close to 15 for TV. But I'd say first is to take a chance on yourself. Send out those tapes to places you don't think you're going to get a job. And if they call back, I remember when I moved to Springfield, Illinois, TV jobs when you start out are really difficult. It almost weeds everybody out because you just get paid nothing. And I remember moving from Connecticut. I didn't know anyone really in Illinois and not too many people in the Midwest. And you just move to a place where you know no one for a job. You're making no money just to have basically you're taking a chance on yourself that this is going to work out and this is going to be a stepping stone to something bigger and better. Whether that's, you're going to end up at network TV, or maybe you don't even end up in TV, but this was a great experience for wherever you're going in the future. So take that chance. Like, don't be afraid if there's an opportunity to take it, even if it's really terrifying, and see where it leads.
Yeah. And like I said before, the don't burn bridges thing, that's really important. TV is a small business and word will get back to wherever. Practical lessons, I would say, always bring like a backup pair of shoes to your story. If it's cold, invest in snow pants and a heavy coat. You can never have a heavy enough coat.
I would say, know you're going to face adversity. I remember when I was in my middle 20s and got laid off, even though it was in the station I was going to stay at, I got so angry. Like, how could they lay me off? Like, what's good? And it's, you're part of these giant conglomerate corporations. Like, there's going to be a point in your life where you think everything is going great and suddenly it's all going to change and it's out of your control. But you do have the power to decide what your future is. So when that adversity, know the adversity is coming, and just know that if you've got the right skills, you are going to be somewhere even better soon. So
I also think a lot of times people think TV is glamorous, and once you get in it, you realize when you're getting into TV, it's not that glamorous. But there are a lot of challenges that come with smaller markets and MMJing and technology. And it can be really frustrating. I guess don't be afraid to speak up about if you're having an issue with technology or you're unable to do your job the right way. Don't be afraid to try and come up with a solution, because that could be a roadblock to you continuing to, in this business. If you just give up and say like, my camera doesn't work, or this software is awful, or I can't be in two places at once, talk it out with a manager. Sometimes it can be resolved in a much easier way than just throwing your hands up.
I know, and you feel like there's a lot of industries where you get beat down a lot, but this one, it can really pile on, especially with the stress and the challenges of the daily. I feel like I'm blessed that I get to tell stories for a living still. I still feel like I'm living my dream job. At the same time, it's so challenging some days when you're like, I have no story ideas. I'm like, we're about to go to work in an afternoon meeting at 2:00. And no matter what, like, Ashley's going to have a story on the news, and we're a Fox affiliates. We lose an hour compared to our competitors. Like at 9:00, she's going to have a story, and we're in a kind of market where it can't just be like a new store opening. Like it's got to be like a hard, leadable news story to be a nighttime reporter. Like that's stressful to do it every single day. So the stress is there, but at the same time, it's also, I think, a blessing to be able to do this.
Yeah, you guys shared. Maybe I'm gonna try to get more of like a tandem on here because you guys are sharing more than twice as much information, tips and thoughts and advice. So I appreciate that. That was all great stuff. I love hearing about the adversity, how it will come. I know Ashley mentioned about basically coming up with solutions, troubleshooting, especially starting out at those stations in Podunk, Kentucky, as I did. I lost my first job too. So Ben, you and I have that in common.
All right.
That's how Krista and I actually, crossed paths. So.
Oh, really?
West Texas. Yeah, I lost my first job, and it's how you bounce back. And I love how you said it's your decision. So I had that choice myself. I could either go home and say I gave it a shot, but I hung in there just like you did. So we've got that in common. And plus, Abraham Lincoln. You said you were in Illinois, Kentucky. That's his birthplace.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of common
They both
ground.
claim him.
Yeah, yeah, he's ours. But let's end with something a little fun here because I want to respect your guys' time. Most embarrassing TV moment. What comes to mind? I mean, you guys have been in the business long enough now. Anything that comes to mind, whether it be during a live shot, at the desk, out in the field, or just a silly moment that, you were caught, off guard, or in lessons learned from it. Anything come to mind for you guys?
Yeah.
I would say maybe two. First of all, we've all had our fair share of not so great live shots.
Oh, yeah.
And, a lot of times people say it feels worse than it actually was. And you look back and you're like, that live shot felt worse. And you watch it, and you're like, it wasn't as bad as I thought. I had a really terrible live shot when I first started. I was in a bureau, and I shared a camera. Talk about adversity. I shared a camera with the other person in the bureau. So she was dayside, and I had to wait for her to be done with everything to get that camera and then feed back my story. And I remember I was live in the early shows that day, and I fed back my story, and then there was some major technological error at the station, and my story wasn't there, and they just said, talk. And I was like, what? And they're like, just talk to fill time. And I rambled, and I didn't finish sentences. And that famous, was it Miss Teen USA, where she's like, and the America and the United States. And I just was saying words that made no sense. And I remember getting off the air and being like, that was really bad. And then, thinking, well, maybe it wasn't as bad as it felt. And I watched it, and it was really, really bad. I still think of that. When people, when I think of bad live shots, I get sick to my stomach. I want to puke when I think of that live shot. The other embarrassing moment was just a few years ago. I was at a bar reporting live from a Brewers game. They were in the playoffs, and it was against the Dodgers. And a woman came up to me and grabbed my face and kissed me, and I didn't know what to do. I was live on the air, and I just was like, back to you. It ended up being funny. And this is pre-COVID, so I wasn't so afraid of the germs on my face at that point, but I was just like so stunned. And I was like, this is forever a blooper that is on the internet somewhere.
Yeah, seems foreign to be in a bar doing that.
Yeah.
Always dangerous.
But
yeah, for me, I'll never forget my first station. I was MMJing. They gave me the big cameras. And in TV world, it wasn't that long ago, but still had a camera that it didn't have a color viewfinder. Like everything was in black and white. And I'll be honest, I'm not a great photographer. But I had MMJ for like 4 years, so I guess I was good enough. But just one day out, big expensive camera that was worth more than probably my car. And sure enough, big wind gust, and I must have barely had it on the tripod. And this thing fell over. I was like, oh no, that's not good. And I look over and I'm like, well, maybe it's okay. And suddenly screws started coming out of it that I didn't know existed. It was just shattered. And I brought this poor camera back to the station, and I'm like, oh, I'm so screwed basically. But they're like, it's okay, we got insurance. So they were really forgiving. But one of my first things, we were just joking about this on Twitter. There was some sort of hashtag, but it was like literally one of my first weeks, I went out, I did an interview with Dick Durbin, who's a senator from Illinois. He lives in Springfield. And he used to, and I don't know if he probably still does, but on Saturdays, he would have these gaggles in front of his house where he'd be back from Washington. And it's like, hey, Springfield media, you can meet me at my house. I'll talk about whatever. And this day, it just happened to be raining or something. And so he let everybody inside his house. We did like interviews in his kitchen. Like, you know, he just set up in his kitchen. We all did interviews. I remember going back and a brand new reporter, terrified I was going to screw everything up, terrified of mistakes. And my station calls me and they're like, hey, where's your microphone? I go, what do you mean? What do you mean, where's my microphone? They're like, Dick Durbin's wife just dropped it off. You left it in her kitchen. You left it. It was like leaving microphones in senators' kitchens and like, think, oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired over this. But no, it's pretty good. There's still times where like they'll go live to you and you'll just forget what you're going to say. Like it happens now. Like you just go blank for a second, and that is a terrifying feeling. So that never really goes away. Still being terrified sometimes to go on television, on live TV.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you guys so much. Like I said, this has been, and we could go down so many different rabbit holes for this conversation, but I have no doubt anybody that sees this is going to pick up a tremendous amount of value just from your guys' experience. I mean, obviously you have to learn for yourself on a lot of things in TV,
right,
but those were all great reminders and stuff. You know, it's refreshing to hear that, you know, people who are still in it today are still learning about it, still getting better, and finding ways, you know, to find those solutions and stuff like that, especially in this season that we're in. So I appreciate you guys, you know, sharing what it is that you know, and making time before your day to go into work.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Kyle.
Kyle, I will say it's okay to ask the competition out on a date, because sometimes it works out. So
it worked out in this case, it looks like.
And thank you for checking out this channel. If you found this content beneficial, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share it with someone you think might find it beneficial as well, because this channel was simply started and created to serve you, to help others grow, to learn how other successful TV journalists do or did it. So take what serves you so you can get better faster and reach your next level.